Silas and the Buzzing Bargain. Silas the farmer owned the sunniest piece of land for miles. His orchards were famous for their neat rows and sturdy trees. Every spring he worked from dawn till dusk, carefully pruning branches and nurturing the soil, convinced that his diligent effort alone would guarantee a spectacular harvest. He dreamed of baskets overflowing with crisp, red apples and plump, juicy plums. However, despite his tireless work, Silas had a secret worry. The blossoms on his trees were beautiful, but they never seemed to turn into the hearty fruit he expected. Year after year, too many flowers simply wilted and dropped to the ground, leaving Silas puzzled and disheartened. He couldn't figure out what crucial ingredient he was missing, no matter how much water he poured or how meticulously he pulled the weeds from his tidy rows. Silas tried every trick in his old farming handbook. He sang songs to the trees, hoping to encourage them with melody. He covered the ground with the softest compost he could find, hoping to comfort their roots. He even spoke to the fragile white and pink blossoms, asking them politely to please grow into fruit. But the petals remained stubbornly weak. Silas would spend hours kneeling by a single apple branch, carefully inspecting the center of the flowers. He knew the difference between a healthy flower and one that was struggling, and most of his flowers seemed to be closing up shop too quickly. He felt like he was running a race all by himself, and still managing to lose. He felt frustrated because his hard work wasn't paying off. Meanwhile, high above Silas's neatly organized world, lived a tiny creature named Melissa. Melissa was a hard-working bee, dedicated to her hive and the important job of collecting. She didn't worry about neat rows or famous orchards. She only cared about the sweetest scent and the richest yellow dust she could carry. Melissa was a messenger of the flowers, flying fast and true, always knowing exactly where to find the perfect pollen and nectar needed to feed her buzzing family. She was efficient, focused, and utterly essential to the world, though few ever stopped to truly appreciate her vital work. Her whole life was a perfect dance between finding fuel and providing life. One sunny afternoon, Melissa detected a promising, gentle aroma wafting over the fence line. It was the scent of Silas's apple blossoms, newly opened and waiting. Melissa zipped happily over the wooden fence and began her routine. She zipped from flower to flower, diligently gathering the sweet nectar and the sticky yellow pollen dust. She was so focused on her mission, filling her baskets and nourishing her hive, that she didn't even notice the tall, shadow-casting man who suddenly appeared right below her. For Melissa, the orchard was just a marvelous, flower-filled place of work, full of possibility and sweet reward. Silas spotted Melissa near his most important tree, the prize-winning Ruby Delight apple tree. He watched her buzzing frantically around his delicate petals. Silas had worked so hard to protect his blossoms from everything: wind, frost, and hungry caterpillars. In his mind, anything that flew too close to his prized flowers must be a danger or a nuisance trying to undo his months of labor. He never stopped to think about what the bee might be doing or why she was there. He simply decided she was disrupting the peace and taking up space where he wanted his fruit to grow. "Shoo! Go on, get out of here!" Silas bellowed, waving his wide-brimmed straw hat violently above his head. He made loud, distracting noises, trying to frighten the tiny creature away. He stomped his boots on the soft dirt, scattering a small cloud of dust. He felt certain that if he just kept everything away from his precious blossoms, they would finally turn into fruit all by themselves. Melissa was terrified by the sudden giant figure waving and yelling. She had never been treated so rudely while doing her necessary job. She quickly gathered the last bits of pollen she could manage and retreated as fast as her wings could carry her. Melissa retreated to a hidden patch of wild clover by the edge of the woods, where she knew the flowers were plentiful and no giant farmer would yell at her. She felt confused and a little hurt. All she had wanted to do was collect pollen and, in the process, help the flowers create seeds. If the apple blossoms were closed off to her, she reasoned, then she would simply find blossoms elsewhere. Why would a man who clearly loved his plants try so hard to keep away the very creatures that help them thrive? She decided that the orchard was not a safe place to work anymore. As the days passed, the silence returned to Silas's orchard. He felt satisfied that he had protected his fragile flowers from the buzzing nuisance. Now, he thought, the fruit will surely grow. But a week later, his hope began to fade. The beautiful white and pink petals turned brown, curled inward, and dropped to the earth, leaving behind no swelling fruit or promise of bounty. Soon, the ground beneath his trees was littered with the disappointing evidence of yet another failed spring. Silas walked through the rows, his shoulders slumped, watching his dreams of a perfect harvest wither before his eyes. Silas knew he had to find the answer. It couldn't just be bad luck or poor soil. He was doing everything right according to his family's traditional methods. That night, instead of settling down to rest, Silas pulled out his oldest, dustiest, and most complicated gardening book. A massive volume, written by a wise, long-ago botanist. The book was bound in dark green leather and smelled of old paper and dried flowers. He flipped past sections on watering and pruning, searching for the chapter that explained why his beautiful flowers refused to bear fruit. Finally, Silas found the crucial chapter. It was titled, "The Gift of Pollen." He read slowly, concentrating on every word. The text explained that flowers need to exchange tiny yellow dust, pollen, between different parts of the plant to create seeds and fruit. The book explicitly stated that the wind sometimes helped, but the real magic workers, the necessary messengers who moved the sticky dust from blossom to blossom, were the buzzing insects, especially the bees. Silas felt a shock run through him. He had chased away the very helpers he needed most. Silas realized he had been thinking about his farm all wrong. He thought he was in charge of everything, but the plants depended on cooperation from others too. He had been so focused on protecting his flowers from the world that he stopped them from interacting with the world. He understood now that Melissa and her friends were not pests taking up space. They were essential workers making the impossible possible. He felt a deep sense of shame for having yelled and waved his hat at such a crucial friend. He knew he had to make amends quickly before the last blossoms vanished. Silas found Melissa diligently working in her clover patch. He approached slowly, making sure his footsteps were soft and respectful. He didn't want to frighten her again. Melissa saw the huge farmer approaching, and her wings stopped humming for a moment. She prepared to fly away, remembering the loud noises and rude gestures from before. She tucked her legs closer to her body, ready for a quick escape if the giant started waving his arms or yelling "shoo" again. She waited warily, wondering if he would ever understand how important her job was. Silas knelt down slowly, making himself small so he wouldn't appear threatening. He lowered his voice until it was just a gentle murmur. "Melissa," he whispered, "I am so very sorry. I didn't understand. I thought you were harming my flowers, but the book told me the truth. You are the magic makers. My flowers need you more than they need me, or my watering can, or my fancy songs." He extended his hand, palm up, revealing a single, perfect apple blossom he had carefully picked up from the ground, offering it as a symbol of apology. Melissa stayed perched on her clover leaf, assessing the situation. She could see the honesty in Silas's eyes and the genuine regret in his posture. She decided to risk a moment of understanding. "Mr. Silas," she buzzed, her voice a tiny, sharp sound. "We bees work hard. We don't just fly for fun. We need the sweet nectar to make honey for our hive, and we need the pollen to feed our babies. When we visit your blossoms, we are simply gathering our food, and in return, we drop off the pollen dust that helps your apples grow. It is a fair exchange, usually. Silas smiled, finally understanding the true meaning of mutual respect. He realized that both he and Melissa needed something from the orchard, and they both had something important to offer. A fair exchange indeed, Silas agreed warmly. How about this bargain, Melissa? I promise never to chase you or your friends again. In fact, I will dedicate a corner of my sunniest field to planting your favorite flowers. The big, colorful ones full of nectar. If you and your hive agree to visit my apple trees first, we can work together. Deal? Melissa accepted the generous offer. A farmer who respected their work and even provided extra flowers was a valuable partner. She flew back to her hive and quickly returned with dozens of her busy friends. The orchard suddenly came alive with a happy, constant hum. The bees knew their job perfectly. They moved quickly, gathering pollen on their tiny legs and gently brushing it onto the centers of the apple and plum blossoms. The orchard went from quiet and sad to bustling and productive, all thanks to the renewed partnership. Silas held up his end of the bargain. He worked quickly to till the designated sunny corner and sowed seeds for sunflowers and bright lavender, flowers he knew Melissa loved. He made sure this new patch was always watered and cared for. He respected the buzzing workers and understood that protecting their space was just as important as protecting his fruit trees. He watched the bees come and go, no longer with suspicion but with gratitude, realizing how much easier his work was now that he had natural partners helping him. Weeks turned into months, and a small miracle occurred throughout the orchard. Because of the diligent work of Melissa and her friends, the small, shriveled centers of the blossoms swelled. They grew and grew, turning first into hard green bumps and then into heavy, round globes. The branches that had been empty now dipped low, laden with the heavy promise of fruit. Silas walked beneath the trees, marveling at the sheer abundance created by teamwork. He knew that all his hard work, watering and pruning, would have been for nothing without the tiny, dedicated efforts of the bees. When autumn arrived, the harvest was spectacular, the best Silas had ever seen. The Ruby Delight tree yielded more apples than ever before. Baskets overflowed with bright red, flawless fruit. Silas stood in the center of his orchard, surrounded by the bounty he shared with his tiny friends. He understood now that true success comes not just from working hard alone, but from recognizing and appreciating the value of others. He learned that even the smallest worker has a huge role to play, and that respect is the most important fertilizer of all. So remember the lesson of Silas and Melissa. If you are a farmer, a gardener, or just someone playing in the park, always look closely at the natural world around you. Every creature, no matter how small or how busy, is working hard and plays a part in keeping our world beautiful and productive. Next time you see a bee, don't swat or yell shoo. Instead, say thank you in your mind for the fruit they help grow. Cooperation means recognizing that everyone, big or small, deserves respect, and when we work together, we all win, and the world thrives. Zig and the Window Weaver. Willow loved the quiet mornings best. She sat in her sunny window seat, reading a book about far-off lands, when she noticed something tiny moving near the ceiling. "Oh," Willow whispered, leaning closer. It was a spider. He was busy spinning a silvery thread right in the corner where the wall met the window frame. His name was Zig. Willow had always thought spiders looked a bit scary with all their long legs. She almost shooed him away, but his work was too interesting to interrupt. Willow watched for a long time. Snip, stick, tug. Zig worked without stopping. "Why are you making such a mess, little one?" she wondered. It looked like tangled gray yarn to her. Just as the afternoon grew warm, a loud, whiny buzz filled the room. A terrible mosquito flew right near Willow's ear. Bzz. Willow tried to swat it, but it was too fast. The annoying mosquito zoomed past the window, aiming for a shady spot. But snap! It flew right into Zig's messy tangle of silk. Willow gasped. She saw the mosquito, trapped tight. It couldn't bother her anymore. She stared at the web, and suddenly, it didn't look like a mess at all. "It's not a mess," Willow whispered to Zig. "It's a magnificent trap. You caught the noisy bug so I can read in peace." Willow carefully opened her window just a crack to let a fresh breeze in, making sure she didn't disturb the corner. She gave the busy spider a little bow of respect. Willow learned that day that even the things that look small or a little scary can be the most helpful protectors. Sometimes the messy parts of the world are actually doing the most important jobs. The bear, the fox, and the honey pears. Within the whispering woods, where the moss grew thick and the sun dappled through the canopy, lived a small fox named Raina. Raina was quick and clever, her coat the color of autumn leaves and her tail a magnificent brush. She spent her mornings darting between the pine trees, always busy, always looking for a tasty snack or a cozy place to nap. Raina believed the forest belonged to the speedy creatures, the ones who could slip away before anyone else noticed. She felt proud of her agility and often zoomed past the slower animals, offering a quick, playful flick of her tail. She loved the quiet rustle of her own paws on the damp earth. Not far from Raina's favorite sunning rock lived a big, gentle bear named Barnaby. Barnaby was enormous, his fur the deep shade of rich earth, and his movements were slow and steady. Barnaby loved the forest too, especially the ancient, sturdy oak trees, perfect for a good back scratch. He believed the forest belonged to the strong creatures, the ones who could move the heavy things and stand firm against the wind. Barnaby was a thinker. He often sat by the river, watching the water flow, enjoying the deep stillness of the world. Though he was kind, his sheer size often made the smaller animals nervously keep their distance. Raina knew Barnaby existed, of course. Who in the Whispering Woods didn't? She had seen his massive paw prints pressed into the mud after a rainfall, and she had once glimpsed his huge shadow moving slowly through the underbrush near the berry bushes. Raina felt a nervous twitch in her whiskers every time. "He is too big," she whispered to a passing squirrel. "Too loud and too clumsy. He takes up too much space." She worried that Barnaby would accidentally step on her favorite napping spot, or, even worse, gobble up all the best berries before she got there. Raina decided it was safest to stay far away from the giant bear. Barnaby also knew about Raina. He had seen her flashes of orange moving through the green leaves, a streak of fire against the cool forest floor. He had heard her quick, light footsteps when she was chasing insects. Barnaby thought Raina looked marvelous, so fast and full of energy, but he hesitated to approach her. "She is too small," he sighed one day to a group of sleepy beetles. "She moves so quickly that I would never be able to keep up with her games. She would probably think I am too slow and boring." Barnaby worried his clumsy size would frighten her away entirely. He just kept his distance. So the fox stayed with the fast things, and the bear stayed with the slow things. They lived in parallel lines, never quite crossing paths, held apart by their differences and their own worried assumptions. Raina thought strength meant heaviness and slowness. Barnaby thought speed meant flightiness and aloofness. Neither of them realized how much the other admired their opposite qualities. Their separation was simply based on fear of the unknown, the fear of misunderstanding. The Whispering Woods watched them, waiting patiently for the day when necessity might bridge the gap between quickness and strength. One sunny afternoon, Barnaby was enjoying a solitary stroll when he came across a magnificent sight, a patch of honey pears. These were the most delicious, juicy fruits in the whole forest, rare and sweet, but they were growing on a cliff edge, dangling from a scraggly branch just out of reach. Barnaby stood on his hind legs, stretching his paws as high as they would go. He grunted and strained. He could reach the leaves, but the sweet, golden pears remained tantalizingly 3 feet above his head. His enormous strength was useless if the object was too high off the ground. He was becoming frustrated. Barnaby tried climbing the cliff face, but the stones were loose and he was too heavy. They crumbled away under his thick paws, sending cascades of dust and pebbles down the slope. He sat down, defeated, letting out a heavy sigh that ruffled the nearby ferns. He longed for those sweet honey pears. He knew he needed something, or someone who could manage the small, quick movements required to reach the precarious branch without disturbing the whole cliff. He realized his strength was only good for moving things that were already close to the ground. Just then, a flicker of orange caught his eye. Raina, hunting for small insects, had stopped short when she smelled the sweet aroma of the honey pears wafting on the breeze. She peered over the edge of a nearby boulder and saw Barnaby. Barnaby was not crashing or roaring as she had always imagined. He looked sad and deeply thoughtful. He was staring at the pears with a look of pure desire. Raina, curiosity overriding her fear, crept a little closer to observe the situation and understand his distress. Raina realized the problem immediately. The pears were dangling from a high, fragile branch that extended over a small, precarious ledge. If Barnaby climbed up, his weight would definitely break the branch and possibly start a small landslide. The pears would be lost forever, crushed beneath the rocks. She watched him try to toss small sticks at the branch, a hopeless attempt that only resulted in the sticks bouncing uselessly off the cliff face. Raina knew she could reach the pears, but only if she had a secure way to get up to the base of the cliff. Taking a deep breath, Raina stepped out from behind the boulder. She took 2 tiny, brave steps forward. Barnaby heard the soft crunch of leaves and looked up, startled. His large eyes widened when he saw the small, bright fox standing only a few yards away. "Hello," Barnaby rumbled, trying to make his deep voice sound as gentle as possible. "I didn't realize anyone else was here. I apologize if my sighing disturbed your hunt, little one." Raina felt a flutter of fear, but she held her ground. She focused on the pears, not the bear. "You haven't disturbed me," Raina squeaked, feeling her voice tremble slightly. She pointed her snout toward the delicious fruit. "You want the honey pears, don't you? They look magnificent, but they are too high up, and the ground is too unstable for climbing." Barnaby nodded sadly. "Yes, they are impossible for me to reach alone. I tried everything my strength allowed." Raina took another breath, realizing this was her chance to help, but she needed to be bold. She had to overcome her prejudice against his size. "Well, I can get them," Raina declared, puffing out her chest slightly. "I am light and quick. I could scamper along that ledge easily without breaking it, but I can't reach the ledge myself. It's too high for me to jump up to, even with a running start. I need to be lifted up quite high to make the initial jump successful." Barnaby looked thoughtful. He looked at Raina, then at the height of the ledge. He realized that if he lifted her, he might just give her the boost she needed. His great strength might actually be useful here. "If I lift you very carefully," Barnaby suggested slowly, "and you stood right here on my head. No, wait, my shoulder is steadier. If you stood on my shoulder, could you spring from there? I must promise to be perfectly still, Raina. I will be your temporary mountain." Raina tilted her head, considering this idea. Standing on Barnaby's shoulder meant being extremely close to the giant bear, something she had sworn never to do. But those honey pears were truly irresistible, and she knew she was the only one who could save them. Raina made a quick decision. She trusted her own speed and agility, and she had seen the genuine sadness in Barnaby's eyes. He didn't look clumsy, he looked earnest. "All right, Barnaby," Raina said firmly. But you must be as steady as a 1,000-year-old tree trunk. Move nothing but your eyes. And if I tap your ear once, that means lower me immediately." Barnaby smiled, a slow, wide grin that showed off his impressive teeth but somehow still looked gentle. "I promise, Raina, as still as stone." Barnaby lowered himself into a steady, four-legged position, offering his broad, furry shoulder as a platform. Raina made a quick, light jump onto his back, then positioned herself carefully on his shoulder. It felt like standing on a warm, living hill. Barnaby took a slow, deep breath, and then, with incredible gentleness, straightened up. Raina soared upward, suddenly far higher than she had ever been, gazing down at the forest floor. She could see the ledge now, perfectly positioned for her leap. "Ready!" Raina cried out. Barnaby offered the smallest, most controlled, upward nudge possible. Raina sprung from his shoulder, light as a feather, and landed perfectly on the small, mossy ledge. The branch holding the pears was now right beside her. She quickly and carefully began to nibble through the thin stem holding the first pear, then the next. She pushed them down the cliff face. Barnaby waited patiently below, guiding the falling pears with soft scoops of his large paws, making sure they landed gently on a bed of leaves. Soon, 6 magnificent honey pears were gathered safely on the leaf-strewn ground. Raina scampered back down the way she came, landing lightly beside Barnaby's foot. "We did it!" she exclaimed, her heart pounding with excitement and pride. Barnaby scooped up the pears with his paw and placed them carefully between them. "No, Raina," he corrected softly, his big eyes shining. "You did it. Your speed and lightness were exactly what was needed. My strength was only useful to lift you high enough to start." Raina picked up the largest pear and pushed it toward Barnaby. "But if you hadn't been strong and steady," she pointed out, "I would never have gotten close enough to try the leap. We both had what the other one lacked. Your hugeness didn't make you clumsy, Barnaby. It made you the perfect sturdy base. And my speed wasn't flighty. It was necessary precision." Barnaby nodded slowly, understanding dawning in his eyes. He realized he had misjudged her based on his assumptions about fast things. They shared the honey pears, enjoying the sweetness together for the first time. Raina discovered that Barnaby was a wonderful conversationalist, full of gentle wisdom. Barnaby learned that Raina was not just quick, but incredibly thoughtful and precise. They had allowed fear and difference to keep them apart, but working together had revealed their shared kindness and mutual respect. The whispering woods seemed to sigh happily as the large bear and the small fox became the most unlikely and perhaps the best of friends. From that day on, Raina and Barnaby were inseparable companions, showing the whole forest that true friendship isn't about being the same size, or having the same speed, or even liking the same activities. It's about recognizing that what makes you different is exactly what makes you necessary to one another. Raina often needed Barnaby's strength, and Barnaby frequently needed Raina's quick thinking. The moral of their story is simple. Don't let differences divide you. What you see as a weakness in yourself or a challenge in someone else might just be the strength that completes the perfect partnership. Leo and the Gentle Friend. This was the rule of wild friendship. Every day, Pip would appear during Leo's quiet time in the garden. Sometimes Pip would sing his sharp little song from the highest, sunniest branch of the oak tree. Leo would wave a gentle, slow hand in response, like a gentle breeze. It became their secret language of trust, built on quiet, shared moments and warm sunshine. Then came a heavy summer storm. The wind howled through the trees and the rain beat down hard for hours. When the sky finally cleared, Leo rushed out to check on his friend. He found Pip shivering under a thick shrub, his tiny feathers wet and ruffled. Pip looked distressed and couldn't fly strongly. He was too cold and tired. Leo knew that even now, he must not touch Pip. Touching a wild bird can cause panic or spread germs. Instead, he found a flat, dry piece of light bark and carefully angled it under the bush, creating a small, safe shelter from any lingering drizzle. He placed a little handful of birdseed nearby, easy for Pip to reach without moving much. Slowly, with rest and dryness, Pip started to feel better. He stretched his wings and shook his tail feathers, testing his strength. When Leo approached the next afternoon, Pip flew right onto the branch just above Leo's head, chirping a clear, strong thank you. The closer distance showed their bond had grown deep and true. As the leaves began to turn brilliant red and gold, Leo thought about the coming winter. True friends look out for each other's future needs. Leo asked his father to help him build a simple, sturdy wooden feeder to hang from the big oak tree where Pip could find food when the ground was covered in snow and ice. Pip watched the whole operation from a safe perch on the fence post, supervising the construction. When the feeder was finally full of seeds, Pip landed right on the roof of the little house. He knew Leo's kindness was steady and reliable. Their friendship wasn't built on hugs or games, but on respect, patience, and shared, gentle space. The best friendships, whether with other children or with wild friends like Pip, need boundaries and gentle understanding. Remember, true care means observing closely, protecting safely, and always leaving room for independence. Be gentle, be quiet, and be a patient friend to every living thing in nature. Leo and Finn, the biggest and the smallest. Leo the lion was magnificent. He had the biggest mane and the loudest roar in the whole savannah. He believed being big meant being best. Every morning, he walked with heavy paws toward the cool watering hole, ready to declare his presence to the world. He didn't think much about anyone else. Not far from the water, down low near the mud and reeds, lived Finn the frog. Finn was small, quiet, and wonderfully observant. He knew every flicker of light and every ripple of the water. He didn't have a loud voice, but he had sharp eyes and quick, springy legs. Crash! Leo arrived. He splashed into the water, shaking the reeds and sending mud flying. Then he let out a tremendous, booming roar. "Hello, watering hole. IT is I, Leo," he bellowed. The noise echoed across the plains, startling the small creatures nearby. Finn tumbled off his lily pad into the mud. He rubbed his ringing ears and blinked up at the massive paws towering above him. Leo looked down, confused. He hadn't noticed the little creature before. "What are you?" Leo asked, still speaking very, very loudly. "Please, Leo," squeaked Finn, covering his ears with tiny hands. "You are shaking the ground. I know you are big, but you don't need to shout to be seen. You just made my head spin." Leo tilted his head. Shout? He was just talking normally. It was the first time anyone had asked him to quiet down. Leo tried to talk softly, but it came out as a rumbling cough. They decided to play a game instead, a race around the big baobab tree. "Ready, set, go!" roared Leo, and he immediately bounded away, dust swirling behind him. Finn jumped once, twice, and realized Leo was already a tiny dot on the horizon. Leo came back, huffing. "You are terrible at running, Finn." Finn shook his head. "And you are terrible at waiting, Leo. I can't keep up with giant leaps." Dejected, Finn hopped onto a low branch. "Wait," he whispered. "Look right there, beneath that root. Do you see that flicker of purple?" Leo squinted. His eyes were trained for far-off gazelles, not tiny details on the ground. "I see nothing but dirt and shadow," he admitted, feeling less mighty. "That root is blocking the path to whatever it is," Finn explained. "It's a moonberry. They only grow in dark places and they sparkle when they're ripe." "If only we could move this root," sighed Finn. Leo puffed out his chest. "Moving things, that I can do." He braced his massive paws against the earth and shoved. The huge root groaned and shifted just enough to create a small opening near the ground. The opening was too small for Leo, but it was perfect for Finn. With a nimble leap, Finn slipped through the gap, grabbed the tiny shimmering purple berry, and hopped back out. He held up the moonberry, glowing softly in the light. Leo stared at the bright berry. His mighty strength couldn't have reached it, but Finn's smallness and sharp eyes could. "Wow," Leo murmured, speaking truly softly this time. "We needed both of us. My roar can't find tiny treasures, but my muscles can move heavy burdens." From that day on, Leo remembered to talk softly when Finn was near, and Finn reminded Leo to look closely before running fast. They learned that friendship isn't about being the same size or having the same voice. Friendship is about using your unique strengths to make a whole, wonderful team.